Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome back to the lab, your weekly place to be for the IFL Digest. It is here where we recap the week that was, prognosticate the week that is to come, and go over all of the other amazing things going on in this great league. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to tune in and sharing some of this awesome stuff going on in the IFL. For those of you who are new to the Indoor Football League or the sport in general, I want to welcome you aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a lead IFL contributor over for a sports forum called Sports Coast to Coast. They are a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes in the coverage of the Indoor Football League specifically, as well as its 14 member teams. We compile up-to-date team rosters, game previews, game recaps, and other great analysis. It is a great place to definitely expand upon your fandom of the Indoor Football League or any of the teams that you enjoy watching. So definitely worth checking out. Again, it is Sports Coast to Coast. I've put a URL in the description, and there you will also find a written version of my Wager Wednesday post. So with that, let's get into the presentation segment here. I know we have the Kentucky Derby coming up tomorrow, so nice little analogy here of we're in that middle stretch now. We're 6 weeks in, preparing for the 7th week of play, as teams have started to kind of separate out a little bit from each other in terms of the league standings. So there's going to be a lot more storylines to come. Looking forward to seeing what we're going to get. So week 6 wasn't our finest effort in terms of picking out winners, but we still got treated to 6 spectacular games of IFL football. In all honesty, this past week was very chalky, as 5 of the 6 favorites won and covered. The only favorite that did not cover or win was naturally the team that we had picked to do so. But that is a rant for a little bit later on in tonight's segment. We'll go over each of these games in more detail in just a moment or so. We'll go over those and see how they add into the season-long tracker. Are there any trends 6 weeks into the season where we can say, oh, one bet type is performing a little bit more reliably than its counterpart? Is that something that we could potentially take advantage of? We also have some perfect streaks that are still intact. We'll check those out as well and see if we want to tail, fade, or avoid those entirely. So once we get to that, we will chart course for week 7. We have 6 games, just as we did last weekend. 5 games Saturday, 1 on Sunday. And we will form a 3-leg parlay attempt. And that was the kind of redeeming quality of last week. We actually got this one to hit for our 3rd winner of the season. And I'm going to have a special guest joining on and contributing a little bit to the game previews. So stick around for that. So here are the game-by-game results in Week 6. We'll start off our discussion here with the Vegas Nighthawks and San Antonio Gunslingers. This was a very interesting game. 2 Western Conference teams below 500 going in. And Vegas apparently riding the hot hand with Jaden DeLaura over reigning IFL MVP Jerome Johnson at starting quarterback. And to his credit, DeLaura led a pretty solid effort. There wasn't really much spectacular stuff going on here as far as offenses go, as both teams decided to trot out ground and pound running games to limit the number of possessions that each team had. This was a unusual game where each team only had 8 possessions apiece. In the end, Vegas got just a little bit more out of their possessions than the Gunslingers. San Antonio put up a respectable effort. They had a chance to tie or win late, just couldn't get that important 4th down conversion when they needed it the most. The final score of that one was Vegas 35, San Antonio 28. That got us kickstarted with an 0-1 record to begin the week. Out in Quad City, the Steamwheelers trying to keep their perfect season intact as the Jacksonville Sharks came to town to visit. I admitted in this one last week, my pick of over 76.5 was one where I was probably the most queasy. So naturally, it winds up as the more convincing winner of the two that we had up on this board. Quad City just looked fantastic here. Both sides of the ball, offense, defense, and special teams. Kyle Kaplan, the Steamwheelers kicker, earning the Special Teams Player of the Week honors for Week 6, as he and that offense led by Daquan Neal and Davion Johnson absolutely steamrolled by the struggling Sharks, who just simply had no answer in containing that Quad City attack at a vibrant arena. Quad City runs away with this one. They have 5 consecutive wins and 5 consecutive covers to start the 2025 season, looking very much like their dynasty days in the early AF2. They win 62-41 to get to 5-0, while Jacksonville falls to 3-2 after getting wins in each of their first 3. Out in Des Moines, we had the Fisher's Freight kind of coming in with a little bit of a struggling streak, seeing if they can remedy that against the Iowa Barnstormers, who were winless entering this one. And lo and behold, it seems like every year since 2023, Iowa is good for one of these sorts of games where everything you know about Iowa Barnstormer football just goes completely out the window. This was certainly a spike game in every sense of the word for them. They got out to a really nice lead at halftime. Fishers did come back a little bit in this one. They got as close as 8 points about halfway through the fourth quarter. But then an interception returned for a touchdown at that juncture kind of put a stop right in Fisher's tracks. At that time, the score was 45-37, and it would be the Barnstormers who rip off 23 consecutive points to end the game and stomp out any hope for the Freight. It goes down as a convincing win for Iowa. They finally get on the board, 68-37, the final score of that one, as Fishers now falls below 500 for the first time in franchise history. Out in Glendale in the Snake Pit, in-state rivalry with the Northern Arizona Wranglers and the Arizona Rattlers. I don't think the result of this game wound up surprising much of anybody. The Wranglers just overmatched in this one. They kept it reasonably close in the early stages of the game. They were only down by 15 at the half. But for a second consecutive game, CJ Fowler in the offense just couldn't find that added gear. Shutout in the second half for the second consecutive game after the same fate befell them last week in their home loss against the Tucson Sugar Skulls. For Arizona, this wasn't their cleanest effort. In fact, it was actually their first game of the season falling below 50 points scored. But they got the defensive bounce back that they were looking for after a rough couple games prior. And they do enough to get us to cover at the 15.5 number there. 49-20, the final score of that one. Arizona goes to 4-0. Northern Arizona to 0-4, looking for any sort of answer they can to try to save their season. So those were Saturday's games. We had 2 on Sunday, starting with a showdown in Lowell between the Green Bay Blizzard and the Massachusetts Pirates. This is a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Final, which the Pirates won. And Green Bay was out looking for revenge. And revenge did they get. The offense was extremely impressive. They scored on every meaningful drive that they had except for one. While the Pirates did everything they could to try to keep pace, but in the end, just fell behind by too great of a margin. With the Blizzard keeping the Pirates at shoulder's length, they were able to come away with the win, 47-35, the final score of that one, which falls heartbreakingly for us, 1.5 points below the over number that we needed in order to get this wager to win. We just got bad luck with quantity of possessions in that second half. Each team only had the ball 4 times in the last 30 minutes of the game, with lengthy drives winding up costing too much time in the end. With the win, Green Bay gets to 3-2, and the Pirates drop to 2-3, and what could wind up being a critical outcome in the Eastern Conference playoff race in the future here. So all that said, it led to a second consecutive week where my prospects in terms of weekly record depended on the Tucson Sugar Skulls, who were 4.5-point underdogs to the San Diego Strike Force in the Sunday Nighter. And this one was very choppy on both ends of the ball for both teams. Tucson was scrappy through the first 3 quarters, and at that time, they were actually on pace to get the result that we were looking for. It was 24-22 at the start of the 4th frame. But San Diego did a repeat of what they did against Vegas in their previous win, getting a 21-0 4th quarter run to finish off the Sugar Skulls. Nate Davis in the offense really kicked it into gear late. The Tucson defense crumbling when the game mattered the most. So that one unfortunately slipped away from us from a betting perspective. But San Diego back to 500 on the season. They win 45-22 as the Sugar Skulls fall to a record of 1-3. So that is how our single game bets shook out. We still do not have a single favorite money line win on the season, which is incredibly staggering. But we're going to have to get some winners in terms of outright picks going forward here if we have any chance of accomplishing some of our long-term goals. But for the season, we are below 500, but maybe that's the fire lit underneath our rear that we need to try to string together some convincing winning weeks here. The 3-leg parlay attempt of week 6 was a resounding success, our 3rd such triumph of the young season. We got Fishers in Iowa to go over 83.5 thanks to that crazy run by the Barnstormers at the end of the game. Quad City winning convincingly by 21. Completed Saturday's slate for us, which brought it all down to Tucson and San Diego under 80.5. A bit risky of a number to take the under on, but Tucson's offense didn't really do all that much in this game, rendering our bet relatively safe in that regard. So those were our 3 winners. We got the payout of plus 556 in full. And with that, we have already met our first preseason goal of getting 3 parlay wins. And we are just scratching the surface, folks. This could turn into something pretty amazing down the line. 14 of those 18 legs have held up as winners, which is astounding. On to the year-to-date tracker in terms of net gain. And last week, our worst weekly record of the season, unsurprisingly, dropping us below the number. The flat method at just under 2 units of net loss, and the weighted method at just over 4 units. Again, a lot of that is born from using the weighted method on those favorite moneyline picks, which have not yet panned out for us this season. So it's a little bit of a trend downwards, but hey, a good week or two in the immediate future here brings us right back to where we want to be. Again, our long-term goal before the end of this season is to try to get to that 6-unit or $60 net gain mark on the season. So got quite a bit of work to do there. And here is our year-to-date ROI percentages, just basically comparing the money that we lost relative to the money that we wagered so far. So flat method at around -5%, and the weighted method at around -12, -12.5%. Try to obviously bump those numbers up here, starting with a Sterling outing this week. Now, at this point, this money line craziness has to be deserving of its own segment here. For those of you who have followed me on X, this graphic will probably look familiar to you. And it just illustrates how ridiculously unlucky these picks have been when you consider them all as a group. The hypothetical scenario, if you started this streak of 6 straight losses with $10 and gone against my selection every time and rolled over all the winnings, that $10 would turn into basically $1,900, with 5 of those selections being plus odds or better, which is pretty ridiculous. How ridiculous it is, we can see on that bottom part, especially if you consider Sunday's results in that, where favorites have a record of 20-11, which further reduces the chance of randomly picking a game where an underdog won. So rather than roughly 1 out of 336 6-game samples, you could try to do that 500 times and come up with the sequence of 6 underdog winners exactly once. So pretty ridiculous. It comes at the expense of me looking like a fool, but these are some pretty crazy numbers, which I guess is fun in its own right. But sometime this streak has to end. Can we make that this week? So our results by bet here. Favorites, like we said before, had a really good week in week 6, winning 5 and covering 5. So it is now the favorites with a 55 to 45% advantage in terms of covering the spread. Negligible difference there in home and road splits as far as spread and money line. That underdog money line favorite, or the underdog money line hit rate goes down a little bit, but going 1 of 6 will kind of do that. The one bet type here that remains the center of attention, the over-unders, where unders have hit 61% of the time within our 31 game sample so far. And if we go a step further and go a bit granular with that, games set at an over-under greater than 83.5 only hit the over about 30% of the time, which may factor in sneak preview of what we're about to see on the big board for this week. So here are our team-by-team trends. As you can see, we have 7 streaks highlighted there that are still perfect. The Wranglers have yet to cover a spread. Every other team in the league has covered at least twice. We're on the opposite end. Quad City is a perfect 5-0 against the spread, looking to continue that. For the over-unders, Northern Arizona still has yet to cash an over, whereas Iowa has still yet to cash an under. And on the money line, we've got 2 undefeated teams and 1 winless team. So the Northern Arizona Wranglers right there, the only team to be perfect in basically all 3. At the very least, it's consistent. Maybe just not the consistent that fans out in Prescott Valley necessarily want to see. But if it's worth anything to you guys out there, the chances of all those going 0-16 is next to nil. So there is that hat to kind of hang on a little bit. So we'll definitely explore these in further detail as we move through our picks here. Our team-by-team records have been updated as well. We have a perfect record in our games involving the Wranglers. We also have 4 wins so far in games involving the Steamwheelers. So a lot of teams we've been doing reasonably well with, but other teams we've struggled. The 2 worst teams that we've had the most difficult time picking correct winners on so far, the San Antonio Gunslingers and the Massachusetts Pirates, both 1-4 in terms of our picks on their games. Coincidentally, those are the 2 teams that are on bye this week. So does that free us up to pick up some more winners on some of these more reliable teams? We shall see soon enough. Now it's time for our disclaimer section. The lines and odds that we're going to be using today, as always, are going to come from DraftKings. This series is for curiosity and entertainment purposes only. It is not a money-making tool. If you want to follow along with my bets and tail, you're more than welcome to do so, but please do so at your own risk. Practice safe gaming habits, manage your time and budget wisely. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you feel that you're bordering on a potential addiction or problem gaming type of situation, there are many, many resources online that you can refer to in assistance in coping with that. Haveagameplan.org, one of many examples of supportive resources out there that many a gambler have gone to for help in that regard. So, moral of the story, just be smart about betting if you do decide to test those waters. All righty, it is time for us to make some picks. But before I do so, I want to welcome in tonight's special guest, our fourth guest to appear on the show this season. He is a fellow IFL contributor on the Sports Coast to Coast Forum. His main calling card is coverage of the San Antonio Gunslingers games. He's also done some great work in covering some of the other teams in the league as well. This is year 2 for him, I believe, on the forum. So we are extremely happy to have him on board. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Chase Risman onto the call.
Alex, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of this. It's good to finally meet you somewhat in person.
Yes.
Besides just a frozen guy on a screen. So
yes.
This is a momentous occasion. It's also my 50th consecutive week of crafting up these weekly previews, by the way. So this is a proper celebration of a momentous occasion, I must say.
Yes, absolutely.
Good deal. So, Mr. Chase, are you ready to head to the big board?
Yes.
And come up with some winners. I
Absolutely.
love it. Let's fire this thing up here. And I'll zoom this in as well to get a little bit more visible. All righty, here we go. I guess we can start from the top down. We have 2 7:05 games here. I don't know why DraftKings has them listed at 9:05, but okay. But first things first, out at the Fishers Event Center, the Steam Wheelers traveling there to play the Freight. Quad City, best team in the IFL at 5-0, are laying 6.5 with the over-under 84.5. Quad City minus 205 money line and Fishers plus 170. What has impressed you most so far about the Steam Wheelers, Chase?
I mean, the offense has looked great under DeQuan Neal. You have to give I'm having a brain fart already. Hold on, it's gonna come to me, I promise. The head coach of the Steam Wheelers. Oh no.
Corey Ross.
Corey Ross, that's right. Yeah, I hope that's the only time I go blank doing this tonight.
No, that's fine. For what it's worth, I called Davion Johnson Davion Simpson or something like that last week. So
yeah,
it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, you have to give him credit for going out and getting DeQuan Neal, and he's made the offense look great in Moline, Illinois this year. You know, Kavion Rudd is still there.
Yep, veteran of the game.
Yeah, I think the majority of the 2022 IFL National or Eastern Conference Championship team is still there. So, yeah, DeQuan Neal's fit in great with them this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Neal was a centerpiece for Bay Area last year that won 13 games. So it really shouldn't come as much surprise that Neal is having similar success in Quad City to begin 2025, yet to lose a game. Is there a possibility, though, with Quad City's recent road history that might suggest that Fishers has a shot here, do you think, at pulling the upset?
I mean, you know, the Freight beat the Oilers in their first home game, and remind me, did they were competitive against Bay Area, right? Or did the Panthers eventually pull away after that?
They were for the most part. They stuck around as much as they could. But in the end, it ended up being turnovers that cost them. I think that game, Keegan Shoemaker started and threw 5 interceptions, 3 of which went to Tyler Watson, the impressive defensive back.
Yeah, I mean, the Freight have been competitive at home. I mean, they beat Tulsa, who's going to be really good, who has been really good this year, and they were competitive with Bay Area. You never know in this league. I mean, the parity has been fantastic the last couple of years, and I think the Freight should feel good about their chances playing at home against Quad City.
Yep, it should be a good one. Fairly close if both games play to their strength. Of the choices on the board here, which one is your favorite?
As far as the game this week?
Yep.
I would have to go with the Blizzard at the Oilers. That game, I think, has the potential to determine a playoff spot. That game I think it was 2 weeks ago. The first time they played was just awesome.
It was. But what's your pick on this Quad City Fishers game?
Oh, yeah. I gotta go with the Steamwheelers. I mean, I just think
on spread or straight up.
Straight up.
All right.
Yeah. I think the Freight will keep it close, but I don't know how you can go against Daquan Neal in that offense right now.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Like this team is 5-0 straight up. They're 5-0 against the spread. That was enough cause for me to take the Steamwheelers here at -6.5. From more of an offensive versus defensive efficiency standpoint, Quad City is roughly 10 points better per 10 possessions than the average team. And it's just hard to see. It's hard to see a scenario where they have a letdown game this week, particularly where that the Freight are going to be trying to run the football. Obviously, Jaya Wright is a really good runner. Keegan Shoemaker has also held his own at times in that department. And the Freight went out and got Shane Simpson to hold the reins at running back, at least for this week. So it's going to be a very run-heavy approach, and that's something that Fishers has done well, especially in their first 2 wins this season. But it is something that can be game planned for. And if you force either Wright or Shoemaker to impact the game with their arm, that's where we've seen the past few games where they've gotten into the most trouble. And from purely a betting perspective here, the fact that we're getting this at 6.5 rather than 7.5 is a very big deal because we're straddling right at that touchdown threshold. At plus 7.5, this might be a different story. But yeah, give me Quad City to ride out this streak. They win and cover for a 6th consecutive game.
Yeah.
Alrighty, on to the other 7 o'clock game in Duval County. The Barnstormers, fresh off that impressive win over the aforementioned Fishers Freight, heading to Jacksonville, see if they can't make it 2 in a row. The Sharks are favored by 2.5, despite their recent struggles. The over-under is 84.5. Iowa's plus 120 money line, and Sharks minus 142. Chase, your thoughts on either team leading up to this one?
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Barker makes quite a difference for anybody. I mean, what he did 3 years ago with the Northern Arizona Wranglers, I think that's the greatest turnaround in the history of arena and/or indoor football. I mean, I know the Bay Area Panthers statistically had a better turnaround a year later, but what he and the Wranglers did 3 years ago was amazing. For them to, I think it was pretty much the same roster as the year before, and then he led them to an IFL championship. Caleb's coming to Jacksonville, and he's turned around a Sharks team that I've already forgotten. Did they win 4 games last year?
They were a 5-11 team
Oh, that's right.
a season ago.
Yeah. They beat the
but they had won 3 of their last 4 games.
Yeah, they beat the Steamwheelers on a kick return the last game to send them to Green Bay for the playoffs, where they ended up losing. Yeah, Caleb has been a big part of the Sharks' turnaround this year, and that's the kind of quarterback that I think they needed going into this year. Iowa is, they played good against the Fisher's Freight last week. Dave Mogensen is a respectable coach. He did a good job. He's done a good job keeping the Barnstormers competitive the last couple of years, even though they haven't made the playoffs. They have not been a tough team, or they have not been an easy team for anybody. And, I wouldn't be shocked if they give the Sharks another close game on us tomorrow night.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if you look deeper into what Iowa's done from an offensive and defensive standpoint, they haven't been that terrible. Offensively, they're at 47 points per game, and that's with rotating 3 different starting quarterbacks up to this point in the season. Obviously, the guy that's had the most success, even though it was a limited sample size of 1 game, is James Cahoon, who, fun fact, played football about half hour away from where I live at Bridgewater State University. So a little bit of Bridgewater State Bear pride for anybody out there watching. But yeah, it's like you said, they've been competitive. They've had the misfortune of having to play the Steamwheelers twice already. But you look at their other games, they held Green Bay to just a 5-point win at Resch Center in a game where I got backdoor covered by the hook with my pick. And then their other game, no, because they're only 1-3 right now, right? So that's pretty much their limited sample of games so far. So yeah, this was a very interesting game for me to choose. And this goes completely against the idea of backing Iowa's over streak, where all 4 of their games have gone over the total. But I do like the under for this one. To me, this comes down to basically the pace of the game regressing down to what we're more or less expecting. On average, teams will typically get a little bit more than 10 possessions per game. Iowa right now is at a 12 possession per game average. So I wrote about this in my written post over on the forum too. But if Caleb Barker has one of those signature games where he's able to take care of the football, even with a bit of a depleted supporting cast, they've made some moves, actually a lot of moves in the transaction page this week. They traded away Eddie Vander, brought over McCammon from San Diego to be their running back of the future going forward. There's a lot of moving pieces right now in that Sharks offense, but if they're able to take care of the ball and sustain efficient drives, I do think that'll be the primary key to help them get back on track. The more that you can limit Iowa's possessions offensively, the greater chance that you'll have at coming out on top. And for this game to stay below that total of 84.5. It's on the plus side of 12 full touchdowns. So that's my play. Is that one that you agree with, Chase, or is there one of these bets that you like a little bit better?
Yeah, as far as the Sharks and the Barnstormers, let's see here. Here we go. Here's the full screen. Yeah, the Sharks at 2.5. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I have straight up. I'm going with Jacksonville just because they're at home and you have to, Caleb Barker, I just think is going to have another big game. He's going to lead them to a win. And, it's hard to go against the Sharks at the Shark Tank.
Of course.
So I got to go with the Sharks.
All righty. And a 2.5 point spread isn't that prohibitive either. In fact, if you get a situation where maybe let's say we have a tie game and the Sharks run up the field, they go kick a field goal at the gun to win it, you would prevail in that case. It's another situation where kind of similar to the 6.5 that we had for Quad City Fishers. 2.5 and 3.5 is either the good side or the bad side of that field goal key number. So minus 2.5, I would assert, would be a reasonable play as well. All right, on to the third game of Saturday's slate. We'd started to go over this one a little bit, but I believe that this is the most highly anticipated game of the slate. Green Bay, Tulsa, round 2 at the Box Center. There are no favorites or underdogs in this one. It is a pure pick'em. Both teams minus 110 on the money line. The over-under is 87.5. Your opening impressions on this game, Chase?
Oh, this is going to be awesome. I mean, the game 2 weeks ago is easily the game of the year at this point. You got two of the best offenses in the IFL, Max Maylor with the Blizzard, and then TJ Edwards with the Oilers. Green Bay's coming off that great win over the Pirates. I think the Oilers had the week off after they beat the Gunslingers.
Yep, they're fresh off a bye.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to be a great game. I think this game could potentially determine a playoff spot, or it could go a long way in determining a playoff spot. I mean, yeah, this is easily the best game of the week.
Yeah, there's just so much, and we've already seen the capability that this matchup has, right?
Yes.
We got through 60 minutes at Resch Center. That wasn't enough, and both teams led up the scoreboard for 68 points apiece before Green Bay got their winning touchdown at the end. So with the way that both teams are playing offenses, combined with the relative defensive struggles that they've had to this point in the season, over 87.5 is very appetizing. But I opted to go with Green Bay money line to try to complete this 2-game season series sweep over the Oilers. This Blizzard offense has just simply been a machine recently. And Tulsa is pretty much there as well in terms of an efficiency standpoint. We saw them a couple weeks ago in San Antonio go perfect in their first half possessions, four possessions for 4 touchdowns. So that ceiling definitely exists. And in a game where this is a true toss-up, I will put my trust in the team ranked 4th in the coaches poll over the team ranked 8th in the coaches poll. But in my mind, there really is no wrong answer for this one. You could go Green Bay and have an argument. You could go with Tulsa and have an argument. This is just a very, very tough game to predict where it really could go either way.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got the Blizzard because, their offense has been playing great the last 2 games. And really, they played great against Arizona. They could easily be 4-1 right now if
certainly
if they had kicked a field goal and then gotten a stop. But yeah, the offense has been great in the last 2 games, and it was great against Arizona. I don't think they're going to just go in there and walk over them because Tulsa is a playoff team this year. But I've got the Blizzard winning straight up and probably on the last possession. It's going to be one of those games.
Yeah, it could very well come down to who has that last possession. It could be a tie game or maybe 1, 2, 3-point margin. However this shakes out, we are in for a dandy. That game you will not want to miss. All right, off to the 9 o'clock slate. There's a couple games here. We'll start with the Northern Arizona Wranglers going on the road, trying for their first win against the Vegas Nighthawks. Northern Arizona is getting 10 and the hook on the point handicap. The over-under 87.5. The Wranglers are plus 270 money line for those gunning for the upset, and the Nighthawks are minus 340. Very interesting game. This has quite a few moving parts. Chase, what are your initial thoughts on either of these 2 teams in this one?
I mean, I can't believe what's happened to Northern Arizona this year. I know they lost I know they lost a lot of the roster to Bay Area, but I thought with Ron James, and I thought with how Northern Arizona has put competitive teams together the last 3 years that they would be a respectable team. I did not see them starting 0-4. As far as Vegas, the Gunslingers gave that game away last week. The offense just didn't. The offense just didn't finish the game down the stretch. The defense had its moments, but Vegas was just too much for them. Honestly, again, as much as I should say the Nighthawks should win comfortably. This league can go either way. And if you don't bring your A game, you're going to be in for a tough night. I mean, I think the Nighthawks are going to win, but I could see the Wranglers pulling this one off because at this point, Northern Arizona, they're 0-4. It's unlikely they can make the playoffs. So why not try to spoil something for Vegas at this point?
Yeah, for sure. And it's easy to forget too that we're still only 4 or 5 games into this season, depending on which team you're rooting for. So there's still plenty of season left. Just when you feel like a team can be dead in the water, they can go randomly make a trade for a star player to suddenly bolster the confidence of that entire roster. We saw that a couple of years ago with the Nate Davis trade to San Diego from the Duke City Gladiators, right? Where the Strike Force were basically putting up like 21 points a game up to that point. Add Nate Davis, and you have the first ingredient to forming what would ultimately become a Western Conference runner-up in 2024. So there certainly is that element to look out for on a week-to-week basis. The Wranglers did go out and get a new quarterback this week in Caleb Lowe. He could start over CJ Fowler, but we're not sure about that yet. That's going to be a coach's decision. And we're going to have a similar coach's decision with whoever the Vegas Nighthawks decide to trot out at quarterback. Do they go Jaden DeLaura again, or do they let Jerome Johnson have the reins back? So a lot of questions to answer here on this one. For that reason, I'm going with my second under pick of the week at a number that I was just simply floored by when these lines were made available. It is 87.5, which, considering that one of the teams in this game has averaged 25 points per game, this is pretty ridiculous what we're getting right here. In order for this over to have a shot, Vegas probably needs to flirt with 60 points on the game, which their highest point total so far was their 49-point effort at San Diego in their season opener. Since then, they have yet to crack as much as 40 points. I just feel like this is a game where both teams prioritize the run, prioritize taking care of the football. I do think this is a fairly convincing win for Vegas, but I don't foresee it being this high scoring. Somewhere around like low 70s or high 70s, low 80s is more in line with what I was thinking that this game was going to be entering. Your pick for this one, Chase?
I got the Nighthawks. I mean, the Wranglers, I think, are going to play them tough. I mean, you never know what can happen in this league, but I do think Vegas is going to win just because, if it's Jerome Johnson or if it's Jaden DeLaura or Jerome Johnson, I just think they've got too much talent for Northern Arizona.
Yeah, it's another situation, kind of like last week where the Wranglers were going up against Arizona, the reigning defending champs. Vegas ain't no slouch either. And, the Wranglers are still out here playing on the road. This one's going to be another tough test for them. The key for them is going to be to generate some sort of positive momentum in the second half, something that they failed to do in each of their last couple games. And what's really been a recurring issue for them in every game this year, with the exception, I guess, of that Bay Area game back in week 3 or 4. So those are some of the storylines surrounding that game. As we make our way down to the fifth and final game of Saturday, the Arizona Rattlers trying to keep that loss column at 0, going to Tucson and playing the Sugar Skulls. We've already seen these two teams play out a game this season. Arizona favored by 11.5, over under 87 in the hook. Arizona's minus 380 money line, and Tucson plus 300. We've seen Tucson play games like this before and somehow manage an upset. Is there any faint possibility that the Skulls could surprise us here, Chase?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, you never know in a rivalry game, but honestly, these are the kinds of games Kevin Guy doesn't let his team lose. Like, he is not going to let them overlook anybody. It doesn't matter if it's the San Antonio Gunslingers. It doesn't matter if it's the Jacksonville Sharks or the Tucson Sugar Skulls. He's not overlooking anybody, and he's not going to let the Rattlers overlook anybody. That's just the kind of guy who he is. And, the Sugar Skulls, what are they? Are they 1-3 this year?
Yep. Entering with a 1-3 record. The lone win against Naz.
Yeah. Yeah. That, to Kevin Guy, they're 0-0. So, he's not going to let them overlook them. And I think Arizona's going to win that one.
Yeah, I know. The Arizona Rattlers, I mean, really since their original AFL days, they've been the poster child of, being masters at these workmanlike, no-nonsense games where it doesn't really matter how heavily they're favored. They just go out and get the job done. And I actually look back to since their 1-3 start last year, they're 17-2 since then, which is insane. In any other case here, my pick would be Arizona at 11.5. But I am going to call upon a new exercise here because we need a money line favorite bet to hit if it is the last thing I do. I have the instrument of salvation here for me as I make this pick. We need to expel these incredibly horrible demonic influences that are prohibiting me from winning a favorite bet on the money line. Vade retro satana, exaude domine patri, in nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Arizona, money line. That's it. And all joking aside, though, in the end game, this Arizona offense is just a bad matchup for anybody, particularly for a Tucson team that, if you play with them for long enough, you can eventually get them to crack. Arizona, with the exception of last week's game, has scored 50 in every one. And last week was a 49-point effort, which hardly qualifies as not 50. We could see another game similar to their first meeting at the Snake Pit, where that one was 56-28 in favor of the Rattlers. So it's going to take a crazy effort and probably the dream sequence of a start for Tucson to have a shot at winning this one.
Yes.
All right. Last game of the slate. It is Sunday. May the 4th be with you as San Diego plays Bay Area for the second time at SAP Center. The Panthers are favored by 5.5. They are fresh off the bye as well. The over-under is 85.5. On the money line, San Diego plus 160 and Bay Area minus 192. What could we expect here from the Panthers post bye week, Chase?
I would expect. I wouldn't be shocked if they're a little rusty, but I think Rob Keefe is going to have them ready to go. Josh Jones did an amazing job last year becoming a big time quarterback in the IFL, and he's picked up where he left off this year. It's interesting that one loss, the one game that they did lose was to the Gunslingers, and they have not skipped a beat after that. They've looked much better, and I would not be shocked, although I do think if they might be a little rusty at first, but I think Rob Keefe is going to have them going at some point, and I think they're going to win that game.
Yeah, they'll certainly have the advantage of home field as well as rest, seeing that they are coming off the bye week. But San Diego has proven that they can be successful in this building. They got that upset win in the playoffs a season ago as the number 4 seed. They retain a lot of that roster that made that great run out to the Western Conference final. And they do bring back Eddie Vander in that trade with Jacksonville that we had mentioned during the Sharks game. So Nate Davis gets that weapon back. They were teammates in 2023, so there shouldn't be much of a problem rekindling that little bit of chemistry. But again, this was a game where I looked at these opening lines, and it was that point total that gravitated towards me. And anybody that has followed me for any stretch of time knows exactly where this pick is going. It is our third under pick of the week at 85.5. If we look at the last time these two teams met, it was a 41-18 decision for the Panthers, falling comfortably below this total. I'm not expecting San Diego to get silenced below 20 points again. But we can stand to reason that Bay Area, on a good defensive day, probably isn't letting up any more than 35 points to the San Diego team. The defense has a chance to reset after giving up an uncharacteristic 41 to Fishers a couple weeks ago. But I think that was more of the result of the game's crazy tempo more than any sort of inefficiency in Bay Area's defense. After all, they did manage 5 interceptions in that game. But that under, it's too tempting to pass up, especially where in the past 20 games involving the Panthers, unders are 15-5. At this point, I simply cannot go against that, even with some other appetizing money line and spread picks on the board. And you had mentioned Panthers outright while you were discussing this, Jake?
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, 5.5. Again, it's not a terrible number to take, really on either side, right? A close game that maybe comes down to a field goal probably favors San Diego in this case. But Bay Area, outside of that opening game against San Antonio, where maybe they were knocking off a little bit of that rust, rekindling some of that chemistry with a bunch of those players coming over from Northern Arizona, they've been unstoppable. And it stands to reason that when the Panthers and Rattlers face off, that will be must-watch TV. But at least for this game, look for both teams to give it all that they have. This is the fabled Battle of California, where, again, my pick is the under at 85.5. All righty, one last task for us to venture into here, Chase, and then we can call it a lab session. Of all these options here on the board, what would you say are your 3 favorite picks?
I've got the Blizzard, the Rattlers, and then the Blizzard, the Panthers, and the Rattlers. I mean, Max Maylor has been amazing in 2 years with Green Bay. The offense has been much better over the last 3 games. Bay Area is coming off a bye week, but Rob Keefe is going to have them ready to go. And again, the Rattlers, if you think Kevin Guy is looking past Tucson or any team, you don't know the Arizona Rattlers going back to when he became the head coach. Kevin Guy treats any team that the Rattlers play like, I don't know, like they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. Like every game is a big one to him.
Yeah, I know. I like it. It's very straightforward. You've got 3 really good teams there. If you take all 3 of these as a parlay, you do get to plus 266, which $10 on that would give you a potential payout of 36.67 if all 3 of those teams can come through. The biggest coin flip, I would say, is this Green Bay Tulsa one. But we discussed how very much 50-50 that game is heading into tomorrow's action. But this will be a fun play to watch and see what happens.
Yeah.
I know when I constructed my parlay for the week, I had mentioned Jacksonville at minus 2.5 being a really good pick. And that's how I started this thing off. I think this is a good bounce back opportunity for the Sharks, especially at home, going up against an Iowa team that very much rode a high last week. It'll be interesting to see if James Cahoon can deliver the same type of performance that he was able to against Fishers. But this Sharks defense, I would say, is a rung above what the Freight have currently played at up to present. Should be a good game either way. I just think that this spread is a bit of an overreaction to what we've seen from both teams in the recent past.
Yeah.
So give me Sharks minus 2.5 there. Second leg of Vegas at minus 10.5. This is another double-digit spread where it's very easy to see a scenario of maybe this getting backdoor covered at the very end. But if there's any one team to fade on the spread right now, it's Northern Arizona. Like we said, they're 0-4 straight up, also have yet to cover. Their closest game of the season was their season opening loss at home to the Fishers Freight. That was by 12 points, and we've kind of seen the Freight play more to their floor in the past few games than the ceiling that they've showed in their first 2. I do worry a little bit about Vegas's offense with this one. Maybe not as high of a ceiling if Jaden DeLara plays. But I think if he's able to operate the offense efficiently, Northern Arizona isn't the most intimidating defense on the block. So long as we can get a nice 6 touchdown performance out of Vegas throughout this game, that should be enough as long as they hold Northern Arizona below 30, which every team to this point has successfully been able to do. And my third pick to wrap this up is an under, but it's not this one that you would initially think right here with Bay Area. I ended up deciding on Arizona Tucson with the under set at 87.5. It obviously does help a little bit getting the 2 additional points as compared to Sunday's contest. But this one to me just comes down to Tucson having a lot of moving parts on that offensive side of the ball. We don't know if Devontae Sapp-Lynch will return. He was inactive a week ago. Top receiver Brian Smith has also been released. And we don't know if the Sugar Skulls go back to Jorge Reyna to start, and he struggled mightily last week, or if maybe they call upon Trip Harrington to fulfill more of that hybrid quarterback/wide receiver situation. Whichever way they go, it's a brutal matchup against this Arizona defense that has proven they are championship caliber. Obviously, the counteract on this is Arizona's offense, who could explode for like 50 or 60 at any given time. But what did this one for me is that if you go back to last season, about midway through, Tucson games 11-1 to the under. It's been a pretty ridiculous streak if you sit down and think about it long enough. That only game that went over in that span was against these same Arizona Rattlers, where the game was set at 80. I want to say it was 82.5, and the game ended with 84. So it was really, really close. Maybe if a field goal doesn't go or a 2-point conversion doesn't go, we're singing the praises of Tucson's 12-game under streak. But such is not the case. We have to settle for 11-1. But in any event, makes for a very tasty third and final leg for this parlay. So 3 legs, each at -110. Comes out to just under 6-1 for a payout potential. A $10 bet, if successful, gives us $69.57. And this, if successful, would hold up as our highest paying parlay of the season, and would be the first time in the series history where we've hit on consecutive weeks. So fingers crossed on that. Again, for those who want to follow along, the parlay is Jacksonville covering at -2.5 at home against Iowa. Vegas covering at -10.5, also at home to the Northern Arizona Wranglers. And for Saturday's Arizona-Tucson game to stay below 87.5. All righty, with that is going to do it for our coverage of these games today. Want to give a special shout out and thank you again for Chase for coming on and sharing some of his thoughts on these games and kind of setting the table for an exciting week of IFL football to come. So Chase, thank you so much. Your time is much appreciated, and we will catch you later.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you want me back, let me know.
Absolutely, man. I will definitely keep that on the radar. All right, thanks again, bud.
No problem. Thank you, Alex.
All righty, so there you have it. Another successful episode of Wager Wednesday is in the books. 6 games coming up, 5 on Saturday, and Battle of California on Sunday. You won't want to miss any of the action. It is on IFL Network. URL for that is also in the description. So definitely go check that out. If you haven't already, you're in for a treat. For those who are testing their luck in the betting world today, or for this week, I wish you the very best of luck. I will see you at the cashier. Have an awesome night, guys.